Oh man, I tweeted this the other day, and it is true. I've been waiting literally years for this show to come to Broadway, and you've been waiting even longer.
No pressure.
Lucas, welcome to Build Series NYC, and congratulations on the Broadway launch of Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812.
Thanks, Laura.
You play Anatole, who we learn in the opening number is hot. This is do you know how many times that line is said in the first?
I've never counted.
I think it's
like say, some days more than others.
But Anatole is hot is the through line of that song. And the best pop culture reference that I can think of to describe the way that Anatole lives and his hotness is there was a 30 Rock episode that John Hamm guest starred in called The Bubble. And he was so handsome that he could get away with anything and didn't really understand that normal people had problems because everyone just gave him everything he wanted because he was so good looking.
This is a perfect example, though, of what Anatole is. I mean, he really is that guy.
Yeah.
He has no idea what it's like to function in the real world. He has no cares about anything. I think it's how he gets what he wants most of the time.
I also noticed, and this is about the way that you embody the character, he takes up a lot of space. He's never worried that, if he bumps into someone, they're lucky to have gotten bumped into.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and the character also, he doesn't hesitate to take money from other people or to think that he should be able to have more than one wife or...
Yeah, I think that's another... it's really awesome to play this part. I mean, you can get away with so many things that otherwise you probably wouldn't be able to get away with. So even that thing of if I run into something, I can just look at it and brush it off and go, yeah, that's exactly what was supposed to happen. Because he's not caught up in other people's perception of him.
People are so forgiving of him.
Yeah, extremely, to a fault, as you all learn.
Yeah, and I also... So I saw the show back when it was in a tent in Midtown, which was like
amazing.
2013.
Good on you.
Yep. Well, lucky me. I mean, like many people who saw it when it was a much smaller production, because it's had many lives so far, I wondered how this production was going to transfer into a huge Broadway house. And man, has that theater been transformed?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. That was certainly, I think all of us had a little bit of a fear in how are we going to turn this into still being the same intimate thing that existed in a smaller space, in a space that's 10 times the size.
The theater, this is the same theater where Les Mis was, but if you saw Les Mis, you would not recognize this theater. It's been sort of, I want to say kind of turned inside out. There are multiple levels. There are staircases that go from the stage into the mezzanine. There are seats on the stage and in these sort of depressions
living rooms,
underneath.
We call them.
Oh, living rooms?
We call them a sunken living room.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly right. They're like, and at some point in the show, you guys go and sit at the tables.
Yeah.
They pass out pierogies at the beginning of the show.
There's platforms out in the audience that people walk through and snake around, even up in the mezzanine. It's all
How would you describe the design of the show visually?
Well, first of all, our designer, Mimi Leanne, is an absolute genius.
All of the designers on this show
they're extraordinary in their
ridiculous.
sense of they've all worked together for many years, so they all kind of speak the same creative and artistic language, and they all sort of have the same aspirations to create something that hasn't really been done before. And I think there's a level of taste that is being displayed that is rarely seen in musical theater. And I think it can fly by you because it's done so well that it feels natural and like, oh yes, this is exactly the organic feel of what should be happening. Even the way we travel throughout the space. So Mimi's set, there's a lot of circular curving that happens. And I read, there's a great book that they made about the show. Actually.
Oh yeah, it's a coffee table book.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
It's totally gorgeous.
And Mimi's section in that, Mimi and Paloma Young, our costume designer, and Bradley, our lighting designer, if you read all of their sections, you realize, yes, these are all people who understand exactly what is going on and what they want to bring to the piece and how they want to foster it in a really incredible way. And Mimi's understanding of, she had this idea of how the piece needs to be moving and how there needs to be curves and sort of circular action in creating that feeling, and that was part of the impetus for the set that you now see.
One of the things that I am so impressed by is this intersection between a true sophistication and also this kind of gritty underbelly.
Yeah.
I wrote down the words steampunk and Russian rave,
Yes.
but there's also a lot of fur and jewels and lavish elegance, and somehow those things complement each other and raise them. It raises everything to another level where you think that they might cancel each other out or feel contradictory.
Yeah, it's such a juxtaposition of styles that are going on, and I think that that's what you get in this situation where you have a team of people that were largely downtown creative artists, whether that's the actors or the directors, also the design team, taking a piece and trying to hold on to the artistic part of it that is most important to all of us, and putting it in a situation where it does need to be a little bit more commercial and needs to function on a larger level. That this is what happens when you marry these two things. And I'm really grateful to be involved in something that can actually hold on to its original source, because a lot of the time you see that slowly get removed over time when something is turning into a more commercial beast.
Well, the original source is real old. This show is based on a small slice of the gigantic book War and Peace. And if you had told me that I was going to fall in love with a War and Peace musical, I would not have believed you. But
I remember when I first was doing the production at Ars Nova, and I was doing this concert series at Feinstein's, and someone, when they were introducing me, they said, "Oh, he's going to be doing," and they laughed. And they're great people, but the idea itself is crazy. They were like, "He's going to be doing an electro-pop opera based on war and peace." And everyone in the room was like, "Yeah, that'll be
good
real
luck
great."
with that.
Yeah, who knew?
Well, I mean, that's what I love about the New York theater scene, is that risks are being taken all over the place, and when attention is paid to it, and that, you know, as they say, the cream rises to the top, and we're able to move really revolutionary new kinds of work into the Broadway sphere.
It's a beautiful moment when that happens, because you know it doesn't all the time. So
Not always, but I think it's hopefully the more that shows like this can come to Broadway and be successful, the more risks producers will be able to take. So, you know, this is one of those situations where we all have to just vote with our dollars and go and see the revolutionary new works, and go and see shows at places like Ars Nova, which is on the west side of Midtown. It's got how many seats? Like it's way smaller.
We had 85 seats when we originally did it, but they sort of reconstruct the entire space every time they do a show. They build like a different theater inside a defined space. They recreate what the space is that you're sitting in. So I think it can't be over 99. Considering contract stuff.
In terms of like its off-Broadway status.
But tiny.
Off-Broadway,
Tiny.
So the show started there, and then it moved into a tent downtown, like meatpacking district, and it grew at that point, seat-wise, I presume.
Yeah, we were allowed to go up to 199 for that production.
And was that the same size as when the tent moved to Midtown, or did it get bigger again?
Nope.
And then when it moved from Midtown to Boston, it grew, that was when it really grew, right?
Yeah.
That was the biggest growth. I heard that in that incarnation, since you're sitting amongst the audience, people got so rowdy you had to like place security guards.
In the tent.
Oh, that was in the tent.
In the tent.
Was that also where you were giving people vodka?
Yeah.
And I don't mean you personally, I mean the production, but I can see how those things would be related.
The tent experience was very much embracing the kind of, there's a war happening outside and we don't care what the F is going on in here because our lives are amazing. So there was a meal being served and there was alcohol being poured, and it was a very rowdy experience, which was a lot of fun. But it was like boot camp for us as actors, sort of negotiating it all when people get to that point. That experience was longer as well because a meal was served, so it was like 3.5 hours. So by the end of that evening, every now and then,
well,
there were some things.
There are some things that have changed, like you're no longer serving a full meal. There's, it's not quite as rowdy perhaps, and it's a little bit shorter in length. But some things have not changed, and one is that the audience is surrounded at all times by the performers.
Correct.
And that makes it the kind of show that you can go back and see over and over again, because you really have a different experience every time based on where you're sitting, based on who you choose to focus on. There are some beautiful moments between you and the woman who plays your sister.
Yes,
Amber Gray,
Yeah.
who's also been with the show for a long time.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun watching you in the moments when you weren't in the spotlight. Every character seems to have their own dialogues that are going on even when words aren't spoken.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things as an actor, and the challenge in this piece is there's absolutely no place to hide because you're surrounded. You know, I even see people here who've been to the show a couple times and they've sat in different places, and every place you sit is a different experience, but we are always kind of available to the audience looking at us. So that's a gift as an actor because it keeps you continually present and continually finding ways to show whoever is nearby who you are as an individual. So we have these tiny moments that are placed all over. But then taking that one step further, because it is so specific to where the actors are and the audience is nearby, you need to sort of replay these moments for different sets of people at various points through the evening.
I want to talk about, you said you've seen a couple of people even here today who've seen the show multiple times already. It's only been on Broadway for a few weeks. You have a group of fans that call themselves the Fanatoles.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we have some here. And they are getting some news coverage. I guess someone was so enthusiastic about their love for you that they tore down a sign outside the theater and it made the papers.
I what does one say to it? I'm extremely grateful to have people paying attention to what I'm doing. You know, at the same time, I'm a little overwhelmed with it all, but they've been nothing but supportive, and no one has. I mean, that's a thing unto itself. So I haven't seen Fanatoles doing that kind of behavior a lot.
Right.
They haven't really overstepped any boundaries aside from that situation.
But they're showing you a lot of love at the stage door.
Lots of
I heard
love.
you got your own Lego.
I got my own Lego. Yeah, the person who made it is actually here.
Oh my gosh, wow, cool.
Really amazing.
And someone else named their pet lizard after you?
Yes, this girl named a skink. A skink is a lizard. I did not know that. It's like a certain, what do we say, species, class of lizard. But you know, part of that too, I think having Josh in the show, he's
That's
brought,
Josh Groban.
Yeah, he's brought this incredible fan base of people with him that are super supportive of him, but also of all of us. They've embraced us completely. They, you know, hang out and wait to see us, even if he has gone already. And to show up and do a show like that on Broadway when you're relatively unknown and sort of feel like, wow, these people care. Unless it is an experience, you know, as extreme and as zeitgeist that like Hamilton is. Yeah, that doesn't happen so much. So we're all super, super grateful for the people that are there every night.
I think that's interesting that you refer to yourself as like sort of unknown because you've been working for so long.
Yeah.
I think I first saw you on stage was it 2010 that you did The Kid?
Yeah.
With Chris Sieber and Susan Blackwell.
Yep.
It was the story of Dan Savage, who I'm also just such a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I didn't think of you as being an unknown. I also know that your work has gone way, way back, way earlier than that even.
Yeah.
You started playing piano at age 3. You started composing at age 5. You were playing the violin in 5th grade, which makes a guest little cameo in Great Comet.
True.
So, you know, you may not have the sort of worldwide fanatic acclaim that someone like Josh Groban does, but you're no beginner.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think it's, you know, this business is tricky in the ups and downs of it and moments that you think something may happen and then they don't. And I've always considered myself a creative above all things, you know, not to fall into a category that is an actor or a singer or a writer. But I do all of them, and I'm very proud to do all of them. But getting involved in other projects, you know, spending a bunch of time in Europe, in between shows, it's easy for a career to sort of, I don't want to say stall, but you lose momentum, you know, when you're leaving town. So I would sort of work on things and then head out of town to work on this project and then come back. And so I just consider myself this person who's like working and kind of pounding the pavement all the time.
Yeah.
So that's where my headspace is around.
That's something that I kind of value above all things, is the ability to put real hard work into something. And I think in some ways, it's especially impressive for someone who was more or less a musical prodigy, because at age 3, you haven't worked for that talent. You were born with that talent. And
Sure.
I think there are a lot of child prodigies who kind of are like, great, I'll just stick with the thing that I automatically do without having to work hard.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about you.
Well,
that
thank you.
Pushed the boundaries of your creative pursuits.
Thanks. I really just, at the end of the day, you know, who knows why any of us sort of have what we have and what we are given. But my compass with that is to just show up and sort of do the most truthful work that I can do, in whatever artistic situation it is I'm in. That's what sort of matters to me the most.
What is it about this project that has kept you coming back for every single incarnation?
The music's absolutely beautiful. The composer is brilliant in his own right, and the way that he mixes styles into the piece that you would think would never, ever go together. That's always, even in my own producing of music, I've always been fascinated with mixing synthetic sound, like electronic sound, with organic sounds, real instruments. And when I first started working on this show and sort of found out, oh, there's going to be a computer that is running all of Anatole's music, because he is sort of the electricity in this play and in Natasha's life, that was going to be running simultaneously with all of the musicians that are placed throughout the room. I was like, wow, this is an incredible sort of serendipitous artistic thing that's happening right now, because I had been consumed with that 4 years prior in a certain way.
Yeah, you from the research I've done, I know that you've always been really drawn to artists like Queen and Bowie, that have this sort of, just this whole sort of Ziggy Stardust vibe, and I feel like Anatole really has that too.
Yeah,
he's not afraid to be a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah,
in terms
androgynous.
Of, yeah.
Yeah.
I always when I have an interview coming up, I bring a notebook to the theater and I'm writing things down, and I wrote, best fitting pair of pants I've ever seen. I think that was at the start of Act 2.
Yeah. Well,
so congratulations to your costume designer.
yeah, Paloma. For real, because honestly, this show is such a crazy workout. Those are pretty much the most expensive pair of exercise pants you will ever see, because I wear them the whole show. And, you know, we're averaging 80 to 100 flights of stairs per show.
Yeah,
So-
I wanted to ask you about that too, in terms of your vocals and kind of your lung capacity.
Yeah.
How did you train for the ability to run up and down all those stairs and still keep your vocals consistent?
Yeah, it sort of happens over time with this piece. You start to realize, okay, where can I really let them have it, and where do I need to pull back? You know, on top of a cardio routine in general. I also learned doing this show off Broadway that physically there were a lot of sort of habitual behavior that I wasn't doing correctly, just in the way you walk upstairs, walk downstairs, sit down, stand up, anatomical, musculoskeletal stuff. So I really spent a lot of time working with a physical therapist who also trained me. You know, we climbed a mountain.
Did you practice singing while you were climbing the mountain?
Every now and then I sing when I'm running. Like if
You
I'm
do?
running through the park, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
want to go running with you. I doubt I could keep up. But I've talked to artists before who sing on the rowing machine because it gets them so out of breath. And once they can do that, they know they can tap and sing at the same time.
For sure.
And I think it's so brilliant.
Yeah, Danae and I also had a discussion about this. She sort of worked on going
That's
up and
Danae
downstairs.
Benton, who plays Natasha.
Yeah, a wonderful Natasha. She worked with several different kinds of therapists, speech therapists, voice therapists, and I know, you know, a bunch of us have kind of put that work in on how do you connect your instrument to your physical self.
So the story is called Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812. I would say that aside from Natasha, you spend more time on the stage than either Pierre or the Great Comet of 1812.
Yeah.
Why isn't it Natasha, Anatole, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812?
Well, I think there's something to the rhythm of that title.
Yeah.
I feel like Anatole would throw a wrench in that, as he does in the play.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? he's definitely the linchpin of which you watch these two people go on these parallel journeys. Not exactly parallel in the emotional side of it, but Pierre is this man who's having a bit of an existential crisis in his life, and this is being mirrored by this young girl who's going through this kind of coming-of-age moment. And Anatole is the impetus and the connection between the two of them in order for both of them to find a bit of redemption in situations where their lives have not turned out the way they expected at all.
I love seeing Anatole sort of get shaken a little bit by how much he feels for Natasha.
Yeah.
Because as we were talking about at the very beginning, this is a man who just gets whatever he wants and just lives in this bubble. And then someone sort of pierces that bubble and shakes him a little bit.
He really believes he loves her. I don't think that he's out to manipulate her. He doesn't think he's doing this bad thing. He sees this thing that he's infatuated with and he wants it. And because he doesn't think about anyone else, only what he wants, he goes after her.
Yeah, this is a role that I think could be played really one-dimensionally, and you don't do that at all.
Twist your mustache and be, ooh, I'm so evil, but...
Yeah, no, you're not doing it that way at all, and I think that adds so much to the production as a whole.
Thank you.
We're going to take some questions from the audience, if that's okay.
Cool, yeah.
How's it going, Lucas?
Hey, man.
Good. I was curious, you said that you've been doing this play for a while. Have you become desensitized at all to the performance, the clothes, the music at all?
Yeah, great question. I have not. Because every time we do the show, we're sort of figuring out how to make it work in a different way, what the language is physically, even dramatically. There hasn't really been time to settle into, oh, this is how I do it. And I'm also, self-admittedly, I'm about details, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so having the chance to do something over and over, I will take it and run with it and look at it every night. What can I do differently? What works? What doesn't? So, no desensitizing for me.
You have different people on stage with you by nature of the fact that the audience is sitting there too every night, which
Wonderful
I think
point.
changes it up a little bit. I'm curious as to whether any of the physical interactions you have with people, whether you're fist bumping someone or kissing them on the cheek, whether anyone's really ever objected to that and like had a reaction that got into your head.
So far, no.
People tend to like being kissed and fist bumped by you, I guess.
Well, I think it's also, I don't really do any of that until the second act. And by then I've sort of pulled out the violin.
The violin's the move.
Well, it's interesting.
They've seen you in those pants.
I've talked about this before, that it's very interesting. Every night when I come out, I get a sense of, does this crowd think that Anatole is amusing, or are they slightly threatened by him? And it's fascinating, because I know from the minute I enter, like if they are sort of threatened or no.
And do you change up your performance to make yourself a little warmer, a little more charming, or?
A tiny, tiny bit. I try to do my best to not be like an audience reaction whore, because that can like ruin your work entirely. But I have observed there is a moment in which, even if the crowd is threatened and I feel like they're not as much on my side, when I pull out the violin, it's really a moment where everyone goes, okay, we like this guy. We'll go along for this. And
cool.
most of the fist bump or the kiss and things are after that.
Yeah.
So I feel like I slowly won them over.
Oh, cool. Good. Do we have another question?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I was wondering what kind of research you did, or if you used anything as inspiration when preparing for this role initially.
Yeah. Well, I read first when we were doing it at Ars Nova, I read the 70-page section that it was based on.
Can I just ask you about that 70? I keep hearing 70 pages, but but War and Peace has been published in so many different ways, and like I assume that the font isn't the same size in every single one.
We all have a similar, and of course I'm blanking on what version of it is, what translation it is.
Yeah.
We all sort of.
It's a couple of chapters, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay, cool. Continue.
Yeah. Then I went back and sort of read before that and through it to understand who the people were. And I'm still working on the book, honestly. It's a lot to sift through. But going into the original audition and the breakdown that I got, it said, has a David Bowie-like quality.
You were like, I got it.
Well, yeah, and again, that sort of serendipitous thing that I'd been working on this project that was a bit of a modern-day Ziggy Stardust, and I'd been watching a lot of Bowie on YouTube, and I'd been sort of looking at how does he pull this thing off, where he's so many different things, where he's extremely sexual, but it's not super based in being masculine or feminine. It's this energy that's all his own. And then we started having discussions, Rachel and I.
That's
Dave.
Rachel Chavkin, who, for my money, is in the best, one of the best directors I've ever seen. A total theatrical visionary. I'm obsessed with her.
One of the most visionary directors around. There's no doubt about it, and super open to collaboration. You know, you remember that we built this thing in a tiny room at Ars Nova with 10 of us. You know, and she knows when to sort of. She hires a bunch of weirdos. She has an amazing ability to like sniff out a weirdo in a room. And know if we collect all of these weirdos, we're going to make something really wonderful. And we started having these discussions about this idea of Anatole being like this alien. Like he doesn't belong there. That's why Natasha's so intrigued by him. And that's kind of how the music supported that idea. Because again, it's this otherworldly sound that's coming in. And then the lighting and everything just sort of started going in that direction. To the point now where he emerges from a wall of light through smoke, you know, which this is like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, if you really think about it.
Oh, cool. Well, this show has had quite a journey. You've had quite a journey. You're together here, you and this show on Broadway, and hopefully that's just the beginning. And we'll be seeing a lot more of this show and a lot more of you in the years to come.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank
Fingers
you, Lucas.
crossed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.